Welcome travelers, welcome back to Map Maven. As always, I will be your cartographer this evening. And we're going to be doing a little bit of work in Photoshop today, making possibly my nemesis. City maps are something I've talked about a couple times on stream. Today we're going to be working on a city map that I actually plan to use in one of my games, so I think that'll help motivate me to do a good job. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and talk about our very necessary tools we're going to have in hand. So of course we have Photoshop, we have Roll20, we have Sirenscape. Roll20 is the perfect online platform for gaming, any kind of game. They've got everything from D&D to Powered by the Apocalypse System to Pathfinder. And you should definitely check it out. It's a great way to share visuals and campaign materials. It's great. Definitely check it out. And once you have that set up, you've got all your visuals. The only thing you're still going to need is some ambiance, and that's where Sirenscape comes in, because with one simple click, you can conjure immersive soundscapes and transfer your players from one location to another. For instance, let's step away from this busy dockside into the quieter interior of the Map Maven cartography shop. We're getting farther away from the chaos, farther from the noise. Wow, wasn't that easy? And of course, today we will also be using Photoshop. Obviously, we're not sponsored by Photoshop, but one thing I do want to talk about is we might be using and probably will use some Photoshop brushes by Star Raven at DeviantArt. They built a lovely set of free cartography brushes that I use pretty much every single time I use a map, or every time I make a map in Photoshop. So you should check them out. The set was completely free. So thanks to them. Their link will be in the description, as will all the links for those other assets. But now that we have our tools in hand, let's go ahead and make a map. Okay, so let's start over here. So we're actually not going to start on this tab. We're going to be starting on the other tab, because the way I make maps in Photoshop, I know I've made a map similar to this before, but I'm going to point this out. Not a city map, but like this scale map. A region map, if you will. This is my map I use for the land of Stygia, which is a country within my homebrew world that I use in my D&D games. So essentially my system for making maps is I start as big as possible, and then I zoom in and zoom in, zoom in on each different map to then make my life easier. So this was even made from a zoom in of a larger continent scale map. And essentially what we're going to do here is zoom in to the region that we are going to create. So I'm going to be using the city of Harrisholt today, which is the city some of my players are about to travel to in one of my games. So I'm going to essentially copy and paste this segment of the map to then import into my other file and then just draw on top of. So I don't have to worry about tracing it, or not tracing it, like redoing it. I can just trace right over a map that I already have. I don't have to worry about whether or not it's going to match up, because I know it'll match up. So yeah, this is the very base of what we're working on. And as I said, this whole thing is even built on a zoom in on another map. What I really like about this is, instead of feeling like all my smaller maps are nebulous little bubbles floating disjointed around each other, I have this sense of connection between them, because I know that wider connective tissue exists on those larger scale maps. So like the continent map has all the gray area between individual countries that I might have, like Stygia and the country to the south, Dawn. And then if I zoom in on this Harrisholt map, the only other maps I have of this region are for around Shorn and then Mucilage, which I need to get rid of this little lorem ipsum that's just hanging out here. But these two maps overlap a little bit. I essentially do, if you see these are hexagons here, I do 5 hexagon square maps for my sort of like region maps. And the reason I do that is because each of these hexagons from flat to flat is 10 miles across. So what that means is the average D&D party walking 8 hours, not exerting themselves, overly exerting themselves, traveling 8 hours, they can travel about 23, 24 miles a day, assuming they're not like moving quickly, right? So that means they can move just about 2.5 hexagons. I think you can probably see where I'm going from here. So 2.5 times 2, that's 5 hexagons. That means starting at the center point on these square maps, it would take them about a day to get to any other edge of the map, which is great for you as a DM because that means usually in any day of traveling on the road, assuming you're in dangerous terrain or even a more populated area like a town or in the surrounding wilderness, a day of travel it's easy enough to build in some buffer, right? So by the time they get to that edge of the map, you might have been able to buy yourself a session of gameplay if you haven't prepped the next region over, which is why I do that size map. So for instance, they're heading from the town of Shorn, which is a not small, it's definitely like a town. There's probably over 1,000 people that live there. It's a major port city, as you can see. They're traveling from Shorn to Herresholt. So this entire trek, I think, was about 60 miles along the road, which is known as the Ramble Road. It's about 60 miles from Shorn to Herresholt. So dividing that by 3, assuming a normal travel time, that's 3 days. So my Shorn map ends about here, I think, right about this hex. Because I use Shorn as the center point. And I'm also going to use Herresholt as the center point. So you'll see there's a little bit of gap, right, from about here to maybe about here that won't be covered in either of these smaller maps. But I'm frankly okay with that. I don't need a zoomed in map of every single region they go to because that's a lot of work. And honestly, how much is going on here? I know there is one tiny settlement that's like an outpost or a fort right at the edge of this forest. But other than that, I'm not planning to put too much along this road other than, some spare farmland, some areas like that. There aren't going to be too many major landmarks along this road. And if I decide to add a landmark, I can just mark that on my larger map because most likely it's as simple as, I don't know, there's a mysterious monolith here. I'll just map that. Like I can mark that on my larger map and remember where it is. I don't need a whole regional detailed map of that area. It just seems like too much work in my opinion. But so for today for Herresholt, we're going to be making a map. And because we're on Map Maven, we're actually going to be doing it on a slightly different scale because on Map Maven I love making my maps this dimension because this fits really nicely on the screen. So for this today, I'm probably going to have a slightly wider, it's not going to be perfectly square. One thing I'm going to do first is obviously one thing you can see here is these hexes. There's a lot more than 5 of them. So that would cover a lot of space. So what we're going to do instead is I'm going to select my 2 hex layers and I'm going to start by, let me zoom out so I can see. It's quite big, this whole layer. So I'm going to start by, actually I selected both of them so they're going to stay in ratio and I'm just going to make it huge. I'm going to make it bigger until it's about 5 high. So that's almost 5. Let's kind of zoom it over here. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. So it's right about 5. Doesn't have to line up exactly, but I like that it shows that. And then, yeah, that's 5 top to bottom. And then how many is that across? Also, it's great if it's like roughly symmetrical. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing because I'm really zoomed out right now. But roughly symmetrical. So like we're getting it kind of centered between these hexes. Great. That looks pretty good. That's going to have to take a second. There we go, to clean up those lines. So we've got, I think this is probably going to be about 5, 10 across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep, pretty much 10 exactly. So it's going to be 5 high and 10 point to point, which is slightly different than anything else. So let's go back to our other map. And we're going to take this tool. Ooh, so these hexagons are at a different angle. Did not realize that was a thing. So actually what we're going to do, we're going to take this, zoom out, and we are going to turn this whole thing so they are in the same direction. And let's also make sure it's still 5 high. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think we can change the size of this slightly. Oh my goodness. I'm trying to get them the same direction because that makes lining up my hexes a lot easier. So I'm going to try it point to point vertically and then wall to wall horizontally. Oop. Okay, let's shift. How'd that get smaller? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Come on. What's happening? I need to zoom out more. I know this is very far. I just can't see it. Ah. I think this is fine for our purposes today. We're going to leave it like that. So this is going to be 5 points high and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and a half. A little odd, but that's okay. We can make that work. So we're going to take this and we're going to go, let's start at this one. We want it 5 points high. We're going to give ourselves a little extra on either side because we know it's a little bit larger. You know what? We'll go ahead and actually just make it 6 points. Yeah, I'm just going to judge it a little. So we're going to go to this. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then a little extra. And then we want, that's a half right there. 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then a half because it ended over here. That looks about right. Now we can move this. We want Harris Holt to be just about center. Oh, you know what's great? It looks like we're actually going to see that area of the map. That was a little bit of a gap there, which I think is great. Now, I know that I'm going to probably do a map of this area too, but I could do both of them. If I do this, ooh, that's interesting. Let's see, let's do a little map planning here. Do I care more about getting these 2 major cities in one, or do I want to split them up? I feel like I kind of just want to keep it dead center. If there's overlap, I can always copy and paste between maps. So there's that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to File, save a copy. Harris Holt, Stygia map copy. Delete. I'm just going to write a note for myself so I remember to delete it. And then what we're going to do is, oh, you know what, actually, forget I did that. I'm going to canvas size, no, what am I doing? I'm going to do crop, edit, copy, where is it? What was it? There's a quick way to do it, and oh, there it is, crop. Okay, so it's going to crop automatically to that selection we just made. Great. Obviously, that deleted all the rest of our map, which is a little scary. That's fine, because all we're going to do is export this. We'll just do a quick export as PNG. Oh my gosh, so many files. Ignore all my files on my desktop. It's just all for like a story I'm working on. See my tax documents. Maybe I'll blur that out later. And then we're going to just undo because we don't want to leave our map cropped, and now it's back to what it was. Great. But what about that lovely selection we just made? Well, we can go here. I can go to my desktop, which is where I just saved that. There we go. It's very small, but that's okay. It's a little silly. This is going to look very blurry for a bit, but that's okay because we're tracing back over the whole thing anyway. And it didn't quite come out to exactly the same size. That's okay. We're not going to panic. Great. Now, actually, one thing we still need to do, where is this? Oh, it's here. Let's zoom this all the way up to the top of the map. Let's lower that opacity on that because we need to make this the scale of the hexes on here. Oh, did I overturn this? I'm just realizing. I overturned my hexes. Gosh. Is that right? What's going on here? Because the points on the map are facing upward. Yeah. Okay. It's weird. Don't know what happened. I thought I already did that. There's a little progress bar off screen that you can't see. That's okay. So this actually looks pretty good scale-wise. So I'm actually pretty happy with this. Let's take it a little bit smaller. Ooh, it is hard to see when it is blurry. Because if that's where it lines up, looks like it should be slightly smaller. Oh, that looks pretty good. Okay, so now we can kind of ignore those hexes now that we've got them all the same size. It's okay. Center that like that, and then we're going to go through and start tracing over our image. Going to turn on our land layer, go here, get a nice big eraser to get rid of this because we don't need any of that. I'm also going to go ahead and lock this layer because we do not need to be moving that around anymore, I don't think. I'm also going to lock our hexes because we don't want to accidentally change them. As you've seen, we don't want that to shift around unless we really, really want it to for some reason. Then we're going to go to paintbrush. Let's make this bigger. Even bigger than that, I think. Great. And then we're going to just paint in. We'll get this more exact in a moment. I prefer to erase than anything else. This one can come down a little bit more here. Just trying to match up that coastline as best as we can. Obviously, since this is a closer coast, like a smaller scale map, we can add more detail into this coastline, because the coastline on the larger map wouldn't show like small inlets or anything that might be visible. I don't know why, but I always feel very powerful when I'm like carving away the land. I'm like, I am a god, remaking the world as I see it. I think that's maybe why I always like doing the erase tool rather than the build tool. Great, so we have that. Then we're going to take this and just fill in the rest of it. So let's make it a little bit bigger than that. Great. Cool. So now we have our little land base. I'm leaving this open because just in case we need to zoom in a little bit and see where these exact coastlines went that were just slightly out of scale. And it looks like this one would start to bend back up, maybe like right here. So we'll just indicate that that bends upward. Not a big deal. Let's check that other coastline. Yeah, that just continues on same way. Continues same way. Yeah, it just all continues the same way. And then I think the only other thing that we really need to keep track of is that river, but it just kind of continues off at the same angle, so that won't be too hard to remember. Great. Okay. Now, one thing I know is actually I want to open my Shorn map because I'm realizing, let me bring this over here so I'm not browsing in any way that you guys are seeing. I would need to, I want to match whatever the scale of that is. Or, you know, if it had any rivers or anything on it, I want to make sure those continue here because obviously those smaller rivers wouldn't be available in this map. Ooh, see, here we go. Here's the Shorn map I made. So hopefully, if everything goes to plan, we should be able to see this stuff on our new map. Yeah, so we have Torbrook, which is coming down this way. And the Heathland and that. I think this will be good to keep open because we'll probably reference it a couple times. Okay. So this is what we have. Let's go ahead and look at some other things we can go ahead and fill in. Don't need the labels open. We do need our natural landmarks, though. We have our forests. Let's see what we used here. I think we just used a nice pine tree, but in that kind of reddish brown color. Let's go down. These are our lovely brushes by Star Raven. Pine tree block. Make that bigger. Maybe 500. Yeah, that feels pretty good. And just double checking, it looks like it goes, there are a couple places on either side of the road, but in this area it would have been out of the road. So let's just try and cover the area as it exists here. Delete some of the excess up here. Don't know if I really ended up adding anything there. That's fine. I just kind of wanted to go back through it. Let's make this a lot smaller. Kind of like that tree goodbye. Probably don't need these trees over here. You can already see that using this zoom in method to build maps, it helps a lot because I'm not overthinking things. I already kind of made these choices when I built the larger map, and I'm just extrapolating on what was shown in the larger map here, giving more details, but not necessarily changing what was already shown, which I think helps a lot because anytime I don't have to make a decision as a dungeon master, it makes my process a lot faster. And so here I'm just, again, just showing the map, you know, that I already said there were trees here. Now I'm just trying to make it actually look like the forest extends this way. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. We will change that color overlay. There's a lot of grassland. Let's see what I used. I just used some sort of sparse. Oh, but this area is much richer. So this is actual like fielded land, it looks like. So let's go ahead and grab this is the marsh block. Is that the one? Let's see, 500. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Yeah, it probably erases some of them as we go. Okay. Put it on our grassland layer. This would actually be chaparral, I believe, is the biome I chose. Chaparral land is kind of, it's not exactly desert. Chaparral land is really common in Italy. And one of my comps, and also kind of in like the low slopes of like more desertous mountain. Like I believe the area in like the San Gabriel Mountains around LA, a lot of that area would be described as chaparral land. It's pretty dry, but not, I don't think technically like a desert. I'm not a biologist. Yeah, so we have this more dense farmland continuing up this way. Ooh. Oh, of course. I did it on the eraser layer as I love. It's my favorite thing to do. So let's just start adding in these. We will definitely be erasing some to create a sense of like dispersion and in scarcity as we go. Just kind of trying to fill it in wherever I'm seeing these little bits on the upper layer. Well, I don't want to increase opacity because it's actually kind of hard to see my little grass as it is. I'll leave that as is. Oops, should have been building in one direction. Because by building in multiple directions, that's how I ended up with these weird overlaps. You always want to build out. See how much that continues. So it kind of continues all the way down that neck. So we'll kind of keep it going all the way this way. Though it does seem like it kind of pairs off a little bit on the southern side. Like there isn't so much of it north here because there's another forest that comes in this direction. And I don't think it comes all the way up to the water over there. Got it. Okay. I'm gonna have to go in with like, that looks terrible. I should not have done it that way. I've made a terrible mistake. Okay. Let's get this guy and I'm gonna just erase this whole chunk so I can not worry about overlapping. Okay, and then back to our brush tool. Okay, I want to extend this a little bit. Obviously the coast is going to be less prairie-esque, but I feel like there could still be some, you know, some grassy areas up there. Great, so we have that, and we're going to mess around with perfecting all of these and reshaping them as we go. Let's go ahead and do our forest. Let's see what this one looks like. So this is Wily Wood, and it's really just kissing the edge of our map there. I think this can be a standard green forest. I am going to use a different type of tree because I don't think this would all be pine. I'm going to say this is a mixed tree block because that makes sense for Wily Wood. Or actually, maybe I could use the jungle trees. Is there a jungle tree? There might not be a jungle tree block. Might just be mixed trees. But maybe I'll add some jungle trees in for some texture. Let's put that at 900. It's coming in like right here. Yeah, it's really just on the edge of that. We're definitely going to change that color because right now it is. There we go. Oh my gosh, I just realized I was coloring all of these. Usually I do them in black. I was doing them all in this weird brown color. Okay. And then we have our river, of course, which is the Jugglar River. Let's go ahead and get our nice curvaceous chisel brush, which I love using for rivers because it gives them like a natural, you know, thinning and thickening. I want it to be pretty big now. Each of these smaller squares is a mile, so that feels a little 2 miles across is a little thick. It would be a little bit smaller on this map, so let's put it at 50. Okay, I'm going to redo that too with the brush turned a slightly different way so that it doesn't get too much thinning and thickening happening. We need to do the same here because this part got a little bit thin, so we'll turn that here. We're gonna, just to tidy up that end, we're gonna take this we go. Now it looks like a nice big river. Let's check out where this other river, oh, it's on the Shorn map, Tor Brook. Now that looks like it's kind of coming down from these fields. Now I don't think these maps are going to technically connect, so we don't have to worry about getting it exactly right. I do think there'd be a bit of it coming from here, because we see that's the road. So maybe it's kind of comes in this way a little bit up into those fields. It wouldn't too much, because the other thing is if we have a bunch of rivers flowing out of the fields, then if all of the water's draining out, there's no water to supply those fields and keep them healthy. So I don't want to get rid of, I don't want it to go too far south, honestly. I would go like here. Maybe it just comes, and this is a slightly thinner river, so this is, let's put it down to like 30. 28 is fine. Let's have it just kind of come like that. Yeah. I kind of want to cut it off earlier. I kind of like how it thins out here. So I think I'm just going to, like that. That's the end of the river. Okay, so those are two major rivers there. We might add some other smaller rivers in as we go. Obviously, there maybe be some tributaries coming into these major rivers. Yeah, so we'll work on that in a second. What else can we do? I guess we can do the road. So I'll go ahead and do that now. I just like copying anything I can down from the original map to base my decisions around. This is a pretty big... Oh, I got my eraser tool. Every time. I truly can't see that at all. Oh, it's because I had it off. Let's go ahead and just erase anything on here in case I accidentally put anything on the map that I did not mean to. That at 30. Still on an eraser. Why do I, every single time, it's truly bizarre. I think it's just because I'm impatient, honestly. I think that can go a little bigger. This is a main road. Again, it is not exactly indicative of the size. The road is not a mile wide, even though it's as wide as that on here. That feels pretty good. Kind of matches the size of the one on this other map. Let's check where it comes out on the other side of Marquee. Just under the Q. right about here. Great. Okay. That looks like most of the stuff that's on this map. Obviously, this hasn't been cleaned up yet. That's okay. I'm kind of keeping it loose to get a rough in before I start fiddling with specifics. For the sake of this stream, I want to focus on Harris Holt because that's the new location that the players are going to that's going to take up several, possibly an arc. So I really want to have a good grasp on the city. Now, this is the largest city that I will have made in this, using this set, like using this world, because I like starting off my players in small towns, villages. I think it's a great way for your players to feel important and powerful, and naturally answers the question of why are these idiots the ones solving everything? They might be the only ones there with any ability, but in a big city, that's usually not the case. So I haven't really done an enormous like metropolitan area yet. So here we are at Harris Holt, first one. I feel like it's going to require different techniques than I've used in the past. I'm excited. We'll see what happens. Now, for a metropolitan area this big, I feel like it would be reasonable to say on foot, it could take you a day to walk from side to side. Because if we look at Shorn, this is a town. Zooming out. This is a town. Now, Shorn is kind of like this is the region of, it's a town, like the name of it is Shorn, but if you look at it, it's broken up into different areas. So like this is all farmland that would all consider itself like in the Shorn zip code. This particular area of Shorn is called Driftport. This is called Dowsing Six, which is like an outpost settlement within the town, within the zip code, is really like the best way I can put it. Is like they would have a Shorn address, even though they might live a while outside the city. Like Dowsing, like I think the thing for a city is that you wouldn't have this vast just farmland stretches of open area. It might all just be urban settlement in that region, which I think is pretty reasonable, because if you look at like the urban area of Shorn, it's maybe 10 miles across. Like it would take your characters a couple of hours to walk from one side of the urban area to another, whereas in a metropolis it would take over a day. And also traveling is slow in cities, so it might take even longer. Okay, which to me is like kind of exciting, this idea of that large of a metropolitan area. Like I think it could very reasonably be like connect to this coast, and maybe there's like an outpost town here. Yeah, I think let me do this. I'm gonna erase that because I don't need it right now. I don't need that little camp house that I made. Goodbye. I'm going to take this. I'm going to take a little writing tool. And I just want to kind of sketch out where this town... I kind of like the idea of following loosely the shape of that structure. Not exactly, but I think that could be interesting. So I think it would definitely connect with like the riverfront. You like here to here. So it's like a 10-mile riverfront. Kind of comes this way. And this is just the urban area. Let's go ahead and switch up our music actually, since we're looking at a new area. Let's go to this one, because it's actually for towns. Yeah, look at that. The sound of urban development. I kind of feel like it might expand out more, having more of a waterfront. Because one thing I also like about the Shorn is it's at this a literal bottleneck on the continent. Because if you see it here, it's a literal bottleneck for this like area. And so Harrisholt is essentially like the capital of everything north of this dotted red line. So this little lore on this area, it's currently been overthrown or overtaken by a very aggressive empire, the Daunis Empire that's to the south. And Harrisholt was the last region. Harrisholt is also kind of the name of the region it sits in. It was the last region to fall in this collection of 3 city-states, the city-states of Stygia. So you have Mistcane, Harrisholt, and Badab are like the 3 city-states. And it was the last to fall. And part of that was because it was able to control the bottleneck. They were able to really prevent the imperial force moving north, which is why this region was the last holdout. Like the town of Mucilage actually never fell, was like continuing to hold out against the empire. And Shorn, at least in my home game, recently managed to regain independence from the empire. But Harrisholt is still under control. So it's also the farthest north empire like stronghold. Everything else is a minor village where they might have a little occupied. But Harrisholt is like their vice grip on the neck of Stygia. So it's a very powerful town for that reason. Not to mention it's also the largest metropolitan area here. Oops, sorry for hitting my mic. That's one of the things I'm really excited to design about this, is that it has a lot of layers of history, right? This is a town or a city that is quite old already, and then it has this new layer of history on top of it where some structures have been destroyed or replaced, or there's new buildings happening because of the occupation, which I think is a really interesting way to look at a map, and we'll talk more about that as we're going in. I can't describe it any way other than I remember on a video game, like a PC video game I played as a child for Magic School Bus, I believe. You had to, essentially it was geology. It was like a geology video game where you were learning all about like rocks and different sediment types and how to like all that sort of stuff. And I remember there was this one thing they talked about on there where, or maybe it was in like a science class I took around the time, but I just remember whoever it was, video game or teacher, talking about how you could interpret timelines based on the way things sat on an image. And I remember specifically seeing an image of an astronaut's footprint on the moon in a crater. And it talked about how, because you can still see the footprint, even though the crater is here, you can tell the astronaut came after the crater hit or after the crater formed, which sounds kind of obvious, but is interesting I was an elementary schooler when I was learning it. So you can also think of the same thing for like rivers or erosion or the building of settlements, where you can look at, because, for example, Venice was built, I believe, before it started to sink. Hello, new subscriber or new follower. I'm going to see you pop up in the chat in a second. But when you... Oh, thank you. I'm glad you like the vibes. I built them myself in Sirenscape. But when you think of like a settlement like Venice, I believe was built before it started to sink. So as it started to sink, then the architecture started to evolve. So you can really look at a timeline of the city of like, this structure has this level of age because of, you can tell like how much it's sunk and how it's evolved. So with Harrisholt, I'm really excited to look at it in terms of, okay, when it was originally built, what was the central kernel of the city? What's the oldest area of the city? How is it expanded? And then when it was taken over by the empire, what parts got destroyed or damaged? And then what new stuff has the empire started to build? Because the empire took over Herresholt a year ago. So it's coming up on 1 year of Herresholt being overthrown, or becoming occupied. So they've had time to start building stuff, but maybe there's not going to be huge grand citadels. So I think it'll be really interesting to look at those levels of history written into our history, into our map making. Okay, so I kind of like this general outline. I think it makes sense that the city would have grown this way as a way to protect the neck, to protect that bottleneck. And I like it having this really wide ocean front on this side, because then it would have had, I mean, this region, ignoring the other regions that it's connected to, its main trade, like its area of influence, is really all kind of like bowed up to the north as opposed to on the southern side. So I think it makes sense that they would have had the major port on the northeast coast instead of on the opposite side. So I like my decision. I'm just validating the choice I made. That's okay. It's good to validate your choices. And I think that's the general this that I'm working on. I'm going to begin actually having to make decisions about things now, which is a little nerve-wracking. Okay. Do I want it to be any bigger? Maybe a little bit. It'll also naturally expand as I'm putting in details. It'll overlap and expand it slightly. Because how long is this? So this would be 10 miles, 20 miles. Yeah, that's almost like 30 miles to get from one major entrance to the city to the next. So I feel like that would make sense. That would make sense. I was looking at a day, and I mean, that's nothing compared to how wide it is. That would be, and if you're assuming in a city it takes twice as long to get places because of the curving roads, that's like a 2-day trek across the city. It's huge. Yeah, I think that's great. I'm just delaying before I have to actually start making decisions. I'm just going to make another layer so I can just work. Now, I think I want to look at these layers, these historical layers of Herresholt. I think that's what I want to build it up. What would the oldest part of the city be? Let's zoom out. Let's look at it larger, on a larger scale. So, the largest part of the city. I think that's also a question about like what are the larger areas of Stygia as a whole, because obviously where things started to grow up in other areas, they would have influenced like whatever was founded first. I know Badab is kind of the oldest region in Stygia in general. Mistcane is probably the youngest, or parts of it are. Herresholt actually might have been one of the last sections to get organized, because this region was heavily influenced by people coming in. It was kind of like the hand extended across the ocean toward new coming people, to people seeking a new life, to people looking for religious freedom. So it would have had a lot of new, fresh blood all the time, which I think probably would have meant that things were growing up very organically as it made sense, as opposed to have been like, oh, it's been around for ages and it has like a strong stoic like thing that it built itself as, and then everyone else is trying to figure it out. It kind of grew as people came. I don't necessarily think this is like the most hospitable region in Stygia, so I think it might have just grown up not quite so old. So to me, that speaks to the biggest reason a city would have been made here would be the road or the water. So I feel like the oldest region of the town is going to be on the coast. So let's go ahead and start just painting. So we're going to take this to opacity 50, and then we're going to soften up this brush. And I'm going to make it colorful. So we're going to do age. Yeah, let's make green seems fresh. So we'll say that green is the youngest, and we'll kind of go stoplight color, stoplight laws. Did I soften this very much? I want it all the way soft. This is going to be the oldest region. Right up here, we'll refine that shape, but we'll say that this area was the oldest. And maybe the road initially just kissed the edge of it, passed by, and then it would have grown out from there. So then I think it would have evolved pretty quickly over time once the road was built. It probably would have expanded really rapidly. So let's say that this next part is going to be like pretty much all of this. Would have grown up really quickly after that. I want to increase my opacity. It's a little hard to see. Let's put it to 70. That's great. Okay. So the majority of this would have grown up after that. I'm going to actually say, let's put this a little bit more orange. Just so it's more distinct when I use my yellow. Then let's go to a really bright yellow. And let's say that this was the newest region, because maybe because the Donna's empire was expanding for a while. It was militarizing, as people tend to do. Over a while, it started to militarize and then start to expand. Stygia was the last place to fall, or the most recent area to fall to them. So it makes sense that maybe they would have started expanding this to try and close off the neck. So maybe there was like a wall extension. I do want there to be a wall that started to extend off here as like they were just trying to defend that territory. And then, okay, so now this is pre-Daunus occupation. Dawn shows up. Oh boy, what would they have destroyed? This is a question for my larger map. So what I know about the Daunus, you can see a bit of it here. Their main capital is like right on this lake. This is called the Thousand Isle Bay. So they have a pretty significant naval force. They're actually probably, I mean, they don't have a lot of river. It's a swampy area. They're very well equipped to work on water. So I feel like they would have been most likely to attack from the water to get their forces there. But then the question is, what gave them the upper hand? I haven't built this mythology yet. How did Harris Holt fall? Okay. Let's think about it. 1 second. Here's what I'm thinking. The Daunus Empire overthrew the Mistcane city-state first. Well, second, it was Badab, then Mistcane. Mistcane was the arcane seat of power. It's one of the most arcanely advanced regions on the continent. a bunch of magical universities, very well equipped for magical warfare or just magical advancement. And I think the Daunus would have, while they're opposed to Arcana in general, they definitely would have taken any advantages they could have got by conquering it. So maybe what gave them the upper hand was Mist Cane assisted with illusory magic and essentially created the illusion of a fleet gathering in these bays in the Cerberine Gulf, in the Cerberine Gulf. That was enough of a diversion for the actual strike force to make their way. Yeah, because they wouldn't have been able to cross the mountains. This river, I don't think would have been. They would have had to go right past Jaquier, which would not have been good. So that caused enough of a distraction and diversion that the actual fleet was able to make their way all the way north, all the way back around, and then attack from the Clavic Cove. I think that's what they did. So that means this oldest region of Herishholt probably would have been largely destroyed because the Daunus wouldn't have had any use for it. So let's go ahead and make this like a dark green, I guess, because I want it to look different than my bright green. So this whole area probably got pretty wrecked. I think it would be interesting if there's like a little slip of the old town left. I think that builds interesting lore as they just like, you know, burned and destroyed and were able to like take over moving south, because the main thing is they would have wanted to take the road. It's very, honestly, kind of reminds me of, not in a, ignore the comparison, like the historical allegory here, but it reminds me a lot of like the battle in Normandy, or the battle of Normandy is that, you know, there were all these different points on the beach that everyone was landing at, and each of the different battalions was trying to press on to a certain point to take the significant points of power along that coastline. So it would have made sense if there were different battalions sent up to purge through Herishholt to take the road. So there would have been like a group that made its way all the way up to like this point of the road, and then there would have been a section that made its way south to this part of the road. So I think that makes sense as a narrative. Yeah, so that's like all got destroyed or partially damaged during the advancement. And now I want to do the greenest green section, which is indicating what's new since the Daunus took over. So the Daunus, there was a lot of damage to this area. They would have wanted, let's look at our larger map. This is why I always world build with a map. It just makes more sense to paint it, because the history in the real world is written on maps. You can see how things shook out in historical battles based on how things look on a map in our real world. So I think it makes sense that it would happen in a fantasy world too. It's just it's the best way to take notes, I think. So what would they have prioritized defending? I guess the northern region, because they occupy everything to the south. So I guess the coastline and the northern end of Herishholt would have been their priority. So they would have started to rebuild along this wall. The port would have been very valuable for them to rebuild. And then they, of course, would have rebuilt around the wall, even though it wouldn't be super heavily defended. And then I think they would have continued the efforts to create a barrier here. I don't think it would be complete. It's been a year, so I mean, they're very organized and have good resources, but I don't think they would have been able to complete that. Okay, so now we have a map of not only what Harrisholt looks like today, but of the history of what happened there. Okay, now that we have that, what we're going to talk about in terms of building this city is we're going to talk about what do we know about this city's focuses? What do they do here? What are they known for? Let me get rid of some of these. Don't need the equator. Don't need that. Don't need that. Just use these guys. We're going to change these, but I'm leaving them with this for now. Okay, delete this one. Don't know why that keeps, yes, delete. So I'm going to talk about, or, world build here, figuring out what this city is known for. Now, I already know a couple things. So Harrisholt is known as, obviously, the city, the main ruling city of this region. It would have been originally founded as a port town. Some of this is going to be just me talking out loud. Things that the city was known for. Very large, like market trade routes, but not specifically in that it they did good trade, yes, but also a lot of the shady underdealings involved with that. Stygia is a very borderline anarchistic place. There is government, but they don't worry too much about everyone falling in line with the same exact stuff. Not everyone is, the city might do some very loose connecting tissue between the other towns in a time of crisis, but overall they're not mandating every moment of people's lives. Extremely open-minded religiously, lifestyle-wise, that it's okay to worship death cults in Stygia. They're very open-minded religiously, which is part of why the Daunis Empire, which is very goody two-shoes religious, they didn't get along. And so they have a lot of that stuff going for them. So Harrisholt, part of the inspiration for the name was the idea of heresy, the idea of their practices would have been heretical. There probably would have been a lot of temples here to gods that would have not been popular or approved. That being said, its focus probably wouldn't have been I think there should definitely be a religious district, because I think that was probably one of the cool things about Harrisholt is all of these wild things kind of coexisting, and it being them being okay with that chaos. So the idea of a sect of a lawful good deity sitting across the street from a chaotic evil cult would be very interesting and bizarre. So they're definitely, I like the idea of there being a religious district. We'll figure out where that goes. Right now I'm just going to write down some different things that this town would prioritize. What else would they have? We talked about trade. So there's definitely going to be a trade district. Come on, let me retype. Why are you being frustrating? Trade. What else would we have? Defense, because it was the bottleneck to the north. So maybe at least in more recent time, there would have been a large defense wing built up. I'm gonna go ahead and put that down here because I feel like that makes the most sense. Obviously trade, we're looking maybe this region connecting down to the road. What else would be a major focus of the town? Trying to think of anything else. Let me look at my larger Stygian map. What makes Harris Holt special? Because that's what this question is all about. What major things is this town known for that it would have a whole area of the town that might be focused on it? Mistcane is known as like the arcane region. It has the most arcane advancements. Badab is known for like its art, architecture, and historical sites. Harris Holt is known for its like rebellious counterculture, heretical practices. So I think maybe the religious aspect is the biggest part of it. It would be a very chaotic city because it's not like, if it's known for being anarchistic and heretical and rebellious, I feel like the idea of like maybe like militia grounds, but that would be in the world of the defenses thing. I guess there would be like a farming, because it's a large farmland. So let's go just do a silly, not a silly one, do a boring one, farming. Then, of course, there would be, I mean, it's an urban area. There would just be some, like, residential stuff for sure. Like, obviously, there'd be residential areas everywhere. But if you think of, like, New York, let me not do New York, I don't know as well. But, like, LA, Van Nuys is, like, or, like, the Valley is largely residential. But, like, Burbank and Burbank is known as, like, a center for, like, obviously the big studios are in Burbank, so a lot of entertainment comes out of there. So I think the idea of there being like areas that are resident, I wouldn't say like the Valley's known for, like, I would mainly consider it a residential area, even though there are businesses in there. There would be a government area because this is the capital. So even though they don't have much of a government, government. Oop. Did I copy this one? I think that's enough for it to be known for. Okay, so I think that's enough niche areas. Now, as a city, it would have, it's a pseudo-metropolis. It would have access to every kind of business. I'm really just trying to highlight the things that the city is known for to make sure it has a particular area that gets highlighted. Okay, so obviously we're going to have trade. That's going to be down at the ports. Easy money. Religious area. I like the idea of that being here. Farming region, I like maybe that major farming area where the guilds would be over here by the road exiting north, because that's, kind of where a lot of the farmland is. There'd probably be a couple other roads out as well, but I think farming would be there. Residential area, I mean, as it expanded, that would have been something that got added on later. And then government wouldn't have really been a thing until it got connected and the road structure was there, because that's when it started to really be like in charge of other areas outside of, just its individual city. So I like the idea of it being that. Okay, so I'm going to do actually another map like this one. but this time I'm going to be painting in just the regional, or not the regional, the different districts. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to put it down to 70. And I'm going to paint again, but this time I'm going to use different colors. Let's do maybe like purples and pinks, so that's really different looking. Let's do trade, because we know the most about how that trade stuff would have worked out. Obviously, coast would have all been trade. And I think the trade district would have extended down to the road. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think the religious district would have kind of slotted in nicely with that. So let's maybe bring that to like a purple. Religious district would have kind of right here. Maybe extending up to that wall. And then the government would have been right along the road. So let's do that in a nice royal blue. That makes sense. Yeah. And then I think this farming area would have been right around the top there. So let's maybe, oops, let's make our farming area like a brown, because we'll be able to remember that differently anyway. So we'll take that, and I think the farming region is going to be like all of this. And then our defense focused area, it's going to be, it's kind of line up really closely with that other one. So I actually think I'm just going to leave that yellow, and then this will be like the larger residential area. I'm going to go ahead and still do some yellow paint over the defense focused area so that we have it on both layers. Now, another thing that would have happened is after Harris Holt took, or the, you know, the people took over, the Donna's Empire came in, they probably would have shifted the focus of some of these areas to defensive. So I think they would have kept that as like the main barracks. There probably would have added defenses along this area. That doesn't totally make sense, I guess. Maybe it just would have taken over some of the farmland, expanded up that way. They would have used some of the religious area for barracks because they probably burnt out a lot of it. So I think that would have expanded to like up there. It would have expanded it that way a little bit, though that's more of like a build area. Oops. Okay. So now we have our messy maps. You always got to start with some messy maps. It's absolutely critical. Now that we have that, I want to redraw this layer to actually figure out what the outline of this city looks like. I think Harris Holt would have been a walled city, at least for sections of it. I don't think the whole thing is walled in. Let's look at our timelines map. This is why we kept it separate. I think anything orange or older would have been walled, is the way I'd put it. So like I think this whole area would have been walled, but this might not have been because it was the newest addition, the defense area. So it's probably actually right outside the walls, though it would have been pretty well defended as well. It would just have maybe it would have a wall. It's just not as advanced as the older walls in the city. Okay. So now we're looking at the walls of the city. I'm wondering if there's like a nicer, if one of these brushes can be used to create that wall. Maybe this one? I feel like I always use, what do I use here? If I maybe used it with a certain level of, it kind of looks nice if I did that in black. How'd that look? It looks like built up brick, so I'd probably just add some effects onto it as I go. Now the wall would have been built second though, so I kind of want to... I think I just got to go for it. Okay. So the old wall, I've come to like here. Move this to the top. I want to try and get this all the way to the coast without breaking it. I kind of like the idea actually of it going, maybe it curved up. There we go. Wait. I came to like a, I want it to kind of like extend straight out to the road instead of curving back to it. Fix that in a minute. Okay. The outer wall is complete. I think I gotta fix up this area a little bit, but that is okay. Let's do a zoom and reduce the size of this brush by a lot. I'm gonna just paint one in. I'm gonna make a fake one. It's okay. Little dirty brick, but that's okay. Nobody will be able to see as soon as I'm this far up. Can't really tell. And then I think now that little curve in the wall is actually interesting to me because I kind of want to put the other bit of wall extending from that particular area. And this would have been a newer wall built. So I think this would be new layer because we're going to do it in a different color. Or slightly smaller because it wouldn't have been, let's do it at 10. And this was a logistical build. They knew what they were building when they built it. They were planning, and it's really just like the most defended area of the military zone, like the defense area of the city. I feel like they would have maybe like continued this line and then just done like a wedge, or would they have focused on making it oblong? I like that. Okay. And then would there be an older walled area? Maybe like the government buildings, but that's not really the vibe of this place. I don't think it would have had just like walled off interior areas of the city. And then they've been building a defensive wall. And that would have continued to extend south. So that, I think, just come out from... Maybe it would just be an extension of this wall, actually. Yeah, it would have just been like, this is the wall here. Yeah, we do that. Wow, that's a long wall. It's like over 10 miles long. It's huge. But makes sense. They were trying to defend. Okay. I think I like the idea of the governmental section of it being kind of walled off. So maybe let's build that, and then it would have gone kind of gone this way because this is like the oldest area. I don't think the religious area would have been closed off, but the governmental area definitely would have. My question is, does it intersect that road? Maybe the main road just kind of like comes along it. That would be cool. Yeah, well defended, center of the city. There might even be like another wall in here. Let me look at, I need to see this one. Okay, so this would have come down. So that whole section of wall would have been destroyed. I think this area would have been the oldest, right? This is the oldest area of the town, so there was a part of that overlapping with the governmental section. So I think maybe what we're going to do is delete a portion of this wall. I want to do another layer of wall because this is a big city. So let's say the oldest area that was not in the religious zone. So let's look at what the religious zone is. Okay, it's right along that wall. I want a little bit more of an organic. Ooh, what if we just take that shape right there? That shape of that window. Let me get rid of that label. Take in inspiration wherever I can find it. Okay. So that's the original. And then this area, let's actually take the line of this building, because why not? it's interesting to take that line. Erase a little bit more. Put this layer back on real quick. It makes sense to me that this area of the Daunus advancement here would have been stopped because of the wall into the larger governmental section. So maybe they just couldn't get through it. So that's why they had to take kind of that curve. If we take this, don't like that it did that. Just realized I put this whole line on the wrong thing. Just get rid of this line actually. Back around there. This way. Okay, kind of a odd little shape, but cities are odd, and this is an odd city in particular. They would not have built it necessarily. Like this might have actually been built after the war started. Hello, Nerdy Sakura, welcome to the chat. Also gonna add another one here. I'm gonna delete these. Okay, so that's the governmental section. It probably would have been that the government buildings just grew up along the road, and then when they realized they wanted to defend this part of the city more heftily, they then walled it, which is why it's such an odd shape. It just grew along the main road through the city. And perhaps the main road still runs through it, so like another road had to be built, and so there's no road that leads straight through it anymore. Let's take a look at that now, actually. Because roads also are a big delineator of like why things are built in a city they are. Or built in the way they are in the city. Where are we looking for roads? Road. Okay. Actually, I like that road exactly as it is, just coming into the city like that. Let's go down to our road brush. I believe this was at 30. That looks right. Maybe it's 35. Looks a little bit wider on the map. Oof. To move my legs. Sitting like a pretzel. Okay, there we go. Inside. And then out the other side. I'm going to erase a portion of that. So stuck on this character backstory and outfit for a different one. Oh, are you working on a new character, or is it one that we've talked about before? Okay, so now we're going to start building roads within the city. So these are going to be much smaller, but they're still going to be significantly large so we can see them on the map. I think I'm going to put this to 25. What does that look like? Smaller. Doesn't look small enough. Let's do 20. I don't want to go too small. Yeah. I'm actually going to go ahead and change some of these road effects because it's a little hard to see. I believe you told us about Yuki last time. I don't know if Moonridge is, I don't think you told us the name of that character before. I really like the way they look on here. What is this layer style I used? Oh, this was so disorganized. I didn't make this on stream, so it didn't have to look pretty. Roads, okay. Nope, that's not even the right road. How many roads were there? Name. Road. I only have one? That doesn't make any sense. Well, I liked that it was light with a darker background, so I guess I'll just try and replicate that. So, color overlay. Normal. Let's make it white. Okay. And then we're going to take this outer glow and we're going to make that. Yes, you told us about the tiefling. Oh, you're doing a tiefling commission. Oh, that's great. I love getting art commissions of stuff. Well, I assume if you're playing a tiefling, you know what color tiefling you want to be. That's probably a good place to start if you choose like a complementary color. Normal. Okay, I want it pretty small. That's pretty good right there. Yeah, that looks pretty good. My ear. Okay, let's go back to making our roads. So obviously this road built here. Oh, I don't like that it does that. I need to change my wall a little bit. Just a little bit. Great. Okay. The roads. Now they would be just connecting these different districts. So let's put those labels back on. She's a pale tiefling, despite that kind of... See, she's normally... Oh, I see. You're saying so she'd normally be red, but she's kind of pale. So maybe she's a little pink-ish. I wear black since it matches with everything. Understandable. Black shirt right now. Well, if she's kind of like a pale pink, you could do complementary colors. So, or, you know, if you... A really fun way to look at it is you look up, like, if you look on a color wheel, there's different kinds of, like, color matching you can do. So, like... you can do the color directly across the color wheel. Directly across would be, yeah, like human pale. I figure though, like, I guess I was assuming that there would be like a tint of pink because it's like sort of fleshy and she did come from like red-ish tieflings. But if that's not the case, but you could always use complementary colors, which is like the color opposite or like little grouping. I definitely recommend choosing like a color palette. You could even just look up like cool clothing color palettes or like cool like color palette with like different style, like cool goth color palette, cool punk color palette, cool rustic color palette, and say like, okay, that's that. You can go on Pinterest and like literally look up like fun aesthetics and stuff. I think that's, if fashion is not your thing, I think that's a good place to look. Okay, so now roads. There would definitely be a road. There would be 2 roads here. I think there would be a road leading from here to the military district. Let's switch over to our road tool. Ooh. I guess they do right in the middle because whether or not they were heading north. This is also the newest direction of the city. Would they really have a direct path? That'd be kind of the unfortunate thing about the fact it was built last. The most efficient way they might have... I might have to draw those roads last. I think there would be a road leading around the wall, though. To the front door. Front of this thing. And maybe, I think there would probably be one leading to like a major part of the river. For like a port access. This road would be pretty logically constructed since it was built last. They knew really what they were trying to get into, so I'd say it probably comes out this way and connects to the road up there as well. Tiefling who is also pale, not sure why. Her father is a human, and both me and my sister are tieflings. Ah, yeah. So, like, I mean, who cares if it's never existed in D&D before? You can always just invent it. It's always fun for your character to be the first person to have done something. I think there'd definitely be a major road heading from here down to the market, because that is one of the oldest roads in the city. I think this would be interesting to build for like age-wise. And trade would have obviously prioritized being able to get to that port or to the front. So there's one heading. Let's do it at a bit more of an angle. So it sort of splits this way, heading up to that oldest district. Right there. Let's look at, this is just our age map, right? Okay. There definitely would have been a road heading up this way. There'd be like a decent amount of roads in here. The bells of Harris Holt. I like the idea of there being a road that kind of comes out the city this way. Because there's a small village up here that I think it would make sense that there would be like a secondary gate that if you wanted to come this way into town, you could. they wouldn't have built a road along. Do people, if there's a coast, you would take a boat. So would you, does it make sense to like build a road along the coast? Probably. Right? Or would it have connected up to the road up here? I'm gonna go with it's along the coast because this is a pretty sea-savvy nation. Goes up that way. Oh, well, if you know what you want the earring to be gold and amethyst, I would say like using those colors of like the gold and the whatever color amethyst is, purple, pink, as like a base for like the rest of the wardrobe, I think would be a good idea. Okay, so I imagine there would have originally been a road coming through this way that is now gone. There would have definitely been a road coming down here. I think this may be this first major crossroad. I mean, this would have been the oldest area of the city. So there would have been a lot built up around there. So I think this is where it starts getting a little wonky, where they like built smaller roads. I think we'll do one large road kind of through here, but maybe that's the only one. And it doesn't connect up to the other side because that's chaotic and frustrating that the road doesn't like connect all the way around. Maybe it goes up that way. And then I'll take that to 10 to make it slightly smaller to extend off some of these other routes. And then there's, sorry, burp, some roads that are extending around this way. There'd definitely be like a smaller road built to like, they had to like carve through some shit to like get access here. Probably connect up like there. And then there wouldn't have been they would have had to carve through so much of the city to like get a military like a marchable road this way. I think once they had the power, they would have kept it as logical as possible. I think there would be like a road there. Then some smaller little just like curvatures going off in odd directions. Which they then would have had to, once this city, it would have been very difficult to get across the city. You would have had to take so many little back roads through things. So there would be a road heading this. They got it started, but it had to keep. Couldn't quite get there. I want some more roads down on this other side too, for the trade ports. I feel like this would have also had, I mean, I guess it would have come here to get in contact, but the idea of this coming that way. Kind of trying to follow the flow of people because people would have more likely been landing here and then coming up, not the other way around. Oop. People would have been coming from like here into the religious district. All these weird branching streets. My gosh, okay. The okay, so she would maybe have like a couple fancy things in a wardrobe to put on. Her everyday attire, I mean, it would have to be practical. As a bard, she doesn't necessarily have to wear armor. I don't remember if they can off the top of my head. I mean, it also depends what kind of, you know, what's the weather like where they live. Is it pretty temperate? Is it Arctic? If it's Arctic, obviously that's gonna change a lot of what they wear. Oh, rogue entertainer. Sorry, I was thinking entertainer. I think that's some nice windy paths. Maybe adding one of these in to fill in that space. Let's look what it looks like without all this color on it. Oop. Looks awful without the color on it. Maybe if we get rid of this background, I don't think we need our little safety net anymore. Oh, wow. That looks cool. I didn't expect it to look cool. I should have expected it to look cool. I'm good at what I do, but I did not expect this. Oh, you know, there would have been other ways, because this main road would have come through originally, so I bet a lot more of this stuff would have connected. But is now closed because nobody can access that part of the city. That's pretty good. Maybe like a little that way, so it feels really like windy and full. I guess there would have always been no, there wouldn't have always been a road to that side of the city. There would have been like an access point. Let me take this back up to a 20 and put one road here. They would have built it along the main road, because this was originally like the farmer's road. There we go. Okay. That looks like a little higgledy-piggledy roadwork area. I'm gonna add one more from here. Just weird little shapes. Okay. That's looking pretty good already. So what I'm gonna do now that I actually have these areas, I'm going to redraw my map with some new colors and add in some detail. Yeah. I'm excited about that. Okay. I don't usually put this many roads on a map. At least not a city map. But I think it makes sense. Ooh, you know, there'd probably be some more through the military area. Because they would have wanted to, like, figure that crap out. I think that would be the only point of access through there, though. So I think other roads would have just been, like, one long, just going that way. Another one going this way. Just real efficient road work. Do I want any other roads in or out of the city? I don't really think so. I mean, I have that one. There is another little town over here, but it's pretty far. I feel like people would have been more likely to travel by water. There would have been some farm work in the area around. Just making this some nice weird shapes to get down to that coastline, because that's like the road. I want to undo that actually, because I want it to be, that's where the wall was leading. There's some like little settlement here. Okay. I think if there would have been I guess there probably would have been some sort of road work to lead from here over to there too. Nice shirt that complements a skirt. She has a trench coat with a rogue cowl hood. Yeah, I think that's a solid idea. Just like a basic, like a blouse or like a tunic or just like a nice, like you could use it like a little camisole type thing. There's some sort of established port on the river, I think. Let's have it come this way. Okay, but would it have formed... Okay, we're going to have to do a road erase here. We're going to erase this part of the road, because if there was a pre-existing access point on the southern side of the river, then that's where the military would have gone to. So we'll say there's like... Also realizing we would need to put on some tributaries, I think. Not too many, but let's do those first because they will inform the shape of this. Let's put them at 10. Too small. Let's do 25. Those words are going over your head. Which words? The words I was saying? think there would have been a river that ran into the city. Some water coming out of the forest here. Oh, your brain just being tired. So it's not, I was saying something that didn't make sense. Thank goodness, my fear. I think that's kind of it. I don't want to do too many rivers. Ah. There we go. It's not wetlands, but, you know, if there's a river, there's probably a couple rivers. Cool. I like the idea of there being this one that runs through the city. That would have also been a huge boon. Oops. But let's erase it and actually make it come up in an area that's a little bit older. Because then that would also make sense why, you know, the city was built the way it was built. So let's erase some of this. Let's make that eraser a little bit bigger. And I like the idea of maybe they diverted the river to create some sort of moat. So maybe it used to run that way. Comes kind of straight up here. And then they moated it. You know, they made it divert that way. Change the angle of that. So they dried part of the riverbed to make the river go the way they wanted to. Oh, wait. It was flowing this way, so they wouldn't have been able to do that. It would have been flowing towards the larger river. So how would that have worked? And would have had to be coming from somewhere in the city, and then they would have diverted it the other way. Ooh, okay, so where is it coming from in the city? Maybe just kind of, I mean, this is a lowlands. I mean, that's the docks. I think this would have been the highlands over here, or the higher ground here, so. That's cool that they're doing like a free art stream. That's really generous of them to do. It's very smart for like getting people to like their stuff. Okay, so let's say this is a very thin little river. Yeah, let's put it at 14. And it maybe started all the way up here. And it's kind of instructing. This poor river's gotten the crap beaten out of it. Let's say it went like through here. I want it to start kind of like up there. And it got like diverted. Probably segments of this river are actually underwater now. Then it got diverted again. Ran over this along the side of the main road. And then they turned it into a moat. Probably ran a little bit that way and then come back this way. Kind of peeled off. Okay. Okay, kind of erase this part. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of some of these layers so I can see what I'm doing a little bit better. I no longer need that layer. I do like that. I'm trying to think what else I want to do here. Like that one, like, there's many movies about the Vietnam War. You mean like Apocalypse Now? Like Penguin Apocalypse Now? I hope that's the Vietnam War. I'll feel very dumb if it's not. Pretty sure it was the Vietnam War. Ooh, okay. So we definitely need to refill some of this. But first I want to finish doing this river stuff here because that looks a little odd. I think it would have filled in this area. Kind of created its own little, it's like lake, man-made lake. Let's make it a little bit wider or a slightly different angle so it's easier to fill in this gap. Okay. This poor little river got the crap beat out of it by this city. Oh, I was building this road. That's what I was doing a while ago. I was building a road to the small settlement on the river. Oops, sorry, shifting. Let's put that at 10, which is I think what it was before, yeah. Full Metal Jacket. Oh yeah, that's another one. See, there's a lot of them. This little town, and then it would have come up this way as efficiently as it could around the established farmland and made port right there. And then there would be a military road leading out to it. Trying to think if there'd be, I feel like there'd be another. These roads are pretty new, so they would be pretty small, but there might be a couple. I like the idea of there being one that comes a little bit more directly. That way I like. Maybe there's a road leading to this river as directly as it can. Another little settlement there. Let's put it on the road side of it, so this goes this way. Wow, this area is huge. I mean, it makes sense. There would be so much going on here. I think there would definitely be... I think there could be like another access point like here. And that's the two main gates, but I do think it would make sense that maybe there's like this one that leads like directly down here. Maybe there's another settlement there. Because trade people, they don't want to go all the way out. They want to like quickly make their way that way. Dang, this is a hodgepodge of roads. I love it though. Okay, so now I want to refine these districts that I had. I'm going to re-layer. What pose are you trying to have the leg in? That's so difficult. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and color overlay on that. Bowing. Oh, so she's like bent over, kind of like plieing, maybe? Like knee bend? Let's make this government section. I think government always looks red in my head for some reason. I don't know why that's the rule. Let's create another layer. Yes. What did I just do? I did the wrong thing. I deleted a layer. I want to create a new layer. And then we have our religious section, which extends out this way. It would have filled in a lot of this. Let's follow the wall we've created. So maybe the religious section was more like, let's follow these walls and roads we've created. Maybe the religious section was more like here. The thing is, it would cross the road. So maybe it was like a large, like that. And I like the idea of maybe it does come like all the way up here. Then we got the farming district. Let me add a color overlay on this. Religion to me always feels purple. Does that make sense? I feel like royalty would be purple. Religion might be kind of purplish. Okay. Of medieval dances, a girl is like bowing to the man before the dance. It's kind of like that, so it's angled. Yeah, that's like a little curtsy, like the little knees are bent so that she's like a little bit lower. It's almost like a fancy squat. And then we got the farming area, so let's duplicate. That's gonna fill up all of this. We're gonna erase the stuff that's outside the lines. Just following where it was before. I know that it doesn't line up with that anymore. The goal is not to necessarily, I knew this map was going to take a long time, so the goal isn't necessarily to finish it today. The goal is to figure out the process, and so far I really like the process. I think the idea of more of this being farming than not, especially up along the wall. Like, why would let's do trade. Well, first let's give this a color overlay. Farming, green, easy. New layer, trade. It's gonna be all of this. guess a different way to look at districts would be like industries. Like what major industries are in each area. Color overlay. Trade. What color is trade? Yellow for gold? Oop. I honestly think I'm going to have to change the industry that's in this area because I don't think residential makes sense as an industry. But for now, I'm just going to fill it in and I will figure out what it is at some point. Could also just be like, this is a wealthy area, you know, like some places it's not so much about like the industry is that it's like a luxury and like the wealthy people live there. I think I'm gonna redo. I don't know what this area is gonna be, so for now I'm just gonna pick something that stands out. So I'm gonna make it blue, and then I want to do the defensive areas. The start of the session, Jeff is spelled with 31 F's. I don't know what it means. Oh, is that like a in-world short like joke for Streamlabs? Oh, I was not the one who made all the commands. That would be Johnny, who is the channel head, which is why I'm unaware of it. See, that military presence probably actually extends all the way up to that entrance. Probably have a bit of a military presence around each of the gates. Let's change the color of that. Military. I guess military actually feels more red. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to change government to a different color. Change government to, what have I not used? I haven't used orange. Sure, why not? Every color of the rainbow in Harris Holt. Okay. Yeah, so I'm sorry. Oh, to answer your question, Nerd Sakura, I'm not the channel lead. I run this show, but the channel lead is actually Johnny, who is the DM on the Curse of Strahd campaign that we have ongoing on Mondays. You know, I'm actually going to create one more new layer, and I'm going to erase some of these sections because this is like a settlement. It's not necessarily like a military settlement. I'm going to say that's a different color. Got it. Okay. My goodness. Obviously, there's still a lot more to do on this map. I feel like I could even go through and be more specific. I think one thing that'd be kind of interesting to do is take these areas and, for instance, in like the farming district, which is, which one? Or let's do the trade district. Like in the trade district, I think it could be interesting to add a second layer even on top of the trade district, and then break that down further. So using this and then creating like a, oh, this is the wealthy area of the trade district, or this is the, like, this is the, not necessarily impoverished, but like delineating the trade area even more. So like, this is where like most of the guild masters live. Like this is probably where like a lot of the people who run and actually are making a lot of the, you know, like making the big money moves in the trades district are like actually up in this area. They're not right down on the wharf. I think that would be a nice way to even give the map more texture as we go. But my goodness, I have so much more work to do. I will definitely share this map when I complete it. I'm trying to think. I can complete it on the next stream because I'm not planning to use this map. Sorry, I was just distracted by Nerdy Sakura's message. In private on Discord, trying to get hired for something. I don't know. I always definitely hold that kind of thing at arm's length. You do not want to accidentally give your information to someone, especially if it might be financial information. Be careful. Don't talk to strangers as much as you can. But yeah, I think I want to go. So next week, my next game for this campaign is on Sunday, but they're not going to be arriving to this region. I'm imagining that's going to be a role play session in one of the towns north, because I can buy myself time with a little bit of map. Oh, right. Well, they're on their way to this town. The party is on their way to this town, but there's a couple things in the way. So I have enough to stretch it for one session. I'm not too worried about them getting here next session. So on Map Maven next week, I'll be able to refine this even more, really make it look good and get it ready for the next game I play with them, which I think will be a couple weeks after that. So because I'd love to show you guys more of the process for this, because we did a lot of work. We did a crap ton of work already, but it is clearly not refined. We were really like blotching it in. It was very Bob Ross of us, of just kind of getting a sloppy little city on there. No mistakes. And I'm really excited about the prospects of what we have here, because this city looks so huge compared to, I mean, look at the urban area of this map. It's literally this little section right here, and that's it. That's the only area where you'd have like a lot of stuff. These areas are like, this is like a collection of people that live kind of close together and like ship stuff down the river, but there's no like huge businesses. There's like a couple like swap meet type areas, and that's all they have. This is the closest thing they have to an urban area. And then compare that to this. Like, for comparison, let's look at this. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe 9 miles. And then 9 miles long, 2 miles wide. Give me a second. I'll draw it. I'll put it on a new layer. It's literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's like this size for scale compared to that. That's a huge metropolitan area. I was kind of worried about it. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make this seem like a big metropolitan area that makes it actually feel like I don't know, I was worried it would feel really empty or wouldn't make sense that it was taking up that much space. But this really feels like it earned that footprint, and I'm really happy about that. So very excited to finish this off next week. Please, until then, I hope everyone stays well. Please consider subscribing to the channel, following us on social media. You can find Talking XP on Threads and Instagram and everywhere as @TalkingXP. You can find me. I focus mainly on Instagram. You can find me on Instagram at Ellen Boner. So that's ELLEN BOENER. I'll put them in the chat right now so it's easier. And then another thing I'll say is I'm currently writing a murder mystery on Wattpad, so you can also follow me on there. You can find that at cryptidpi. Let me just actually type all these in because it's not letting me copy and paste. At Talking XP, and then chat. Oh, it did not want me to post it. So sorry. Let me type it on my phone because that'll be easier. So on Instagram, you can find at Talking XP. You can find me at Ellen Boner in the chat. And then you can find me on Wattpad at Cryptid PI, or it also might come up as at Ellen B. So you can find me there, and you can check out the murder mystery story I'm writing. It's a story of a human detective who gets recruited by a werewolf to solve the murder of their grandmother. And it's just fun. It's kind of my love letter to Agatha Christie style murder mysteries, which I'm a huge fan of, meeting my love of like supernatural and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I'm wearing a Buffy shirt right now, where you take, the world of a Buffy or a supernatural where there's demons hiding among us and there's hunters and all that. But instead of focusing on people trying to slay and destroy monsters, it's the story of one down on the luck detective getting recruited to solve their murder mysteries. So I hope you enjoy it. Until then, you can also catch Talking XP on Mondays for our Curse of Strahd stream at 7:30 p.m. Pacific every Monday. I am also there. I play an artificer, Beatrice LeBeau. It's a great time. Next week, we're going to be right back here in Harris-Schult, finishing up this map, making it look real pretty and beautiful. Until then, I hope all of you guys travel safe and bring a map so you don't get lost. Good night, everyone.